I'm here to talk today about self-perceptions, so the way we think about ourselves, but also how it can limit us. Before we get into this, my name is Lee. I am an ICF certified leadership course, and I'm particularly passionate about building the careers of people who are neurodivergent. So perception is a little bit of a nebulous concept, and I was actually researching definitions to put in this video, and it took me a little while to find the right one that fit. I'm actually going to go with the Merriam-Webster definition. So that says, perception is the act of perceiving, which is given by, to attain awareness or understanding of, to regard as being such, or to become aware through the senses. Based on this definition, there's kind of two aspects of perception. So perception of becoming aware, some new awareness that's becoming, or perception of how we think about things, to regard as such. And it's actually this second definition that I want to focus on for today's video. So when I think about self-perception, I'm thinking about things that we regard to be true. It might be titles that we have. It might be son, daughter, niece, nephew, brother, sister. It might be entrepreneur. It might be leader, manager, data scientist. Or it just might be the way that we think about how we do things. We might think, I'm a great speaker. We might think, I'm not good at maths. You might think, I'm a guitarist, or I have no musical talent. All of these are things that we think about ourselves, and they're all perceptions that we have of ourselves, rightly or wrongly. One thing to note about these self-perceptions is they actually affect the way that we move through the world, how we respond to certain things, and also what paths we take in life, depending on what we believe to be true about ourselves. These self-perceptions can actually start really early on, even in childhood. You might do really well at a test when you're like 5 or 6 years old and get told you're really smart, and that's a good self-perception to a certain extent, and you might go into things feeling like you're really smart and that you can handle things at school, that you're going to get good grades, until the first time you find something that's hard. And that might throw off your self-perception completely, and you might have, what if people were wrong about me? And suddenly this perception, this identity you have as being a smart person is completely destroyed by one sort of change. That kind of comes into the fixed versus growth mindset conversation, which is one I want to have a little bit later on, but it's an example of a self-perception that is built really early on. Or maybe you were told that you were lazy and that you had so much potential that if only you tried a little bit harder. Ooh, that one's tough. I'm talking to my fellow ADHDers here. I'm sorry from a young age you were made to feel that way and people didn't understand that you had ADHD, and so some things were a little bit harder. This can be generalised to other forms of neurodivergence as well. Maybe you were told you were clumsy, that you were careless because you accidentally knock into things from time to time because you have dyspraxia. And really you are actually so careful and you try so much harder than people because you find this hard, and that label of careless just does not apply at all. Maybe you were called a weirdo and unwilling to make friends because you have autism and you struggled with that when you were growing up. Actually, you love making friends, you love people, just that you're autistic, and so learning the rules of how to make friends was a little bit harder. But that label doesn't apply. Regardless of whether you're neurodivergent or not, these perceptions that we hear are important, because when we're young or we're vulnerable, the things that people say about us, we start to internalize them and we start to build up these images of ourselves. But these self-perceptions are kind of more impactful than just making us feel good or bad about ourselves, depending on what the perception is. The reality is that our human brains are amazing at pattern recognition. We get bombarded with so much information on a daily basis. We have to find a way to make sense of this. And so our brains are filtering constantly. They're spotting patterns and they're finding ways to understand the world. A great book that talks about this is Maxwell Maltz's Psycho-Cybernetics. And it's a little bit dated at this point. It came out in the 1960s. Please go into that with the mindset that it is of its time, so it's not perfect. But the intuitive concepts are a really great explanation here. And the way he phrases that is, our human brain works almost like a homing missile. So if we have a self-image or a self-belief and a goal that we want to attain related to it, then the way we work is our human brain will adjust to get us back on track. We'll notice the things that allow us to take the opportunities to adjust to where we need to go. And that's really important because our self-perception is what builds our self-image. the way we feel about ourselves is the way that this homing missile is going to go. So putting this in the context of pattern recognitions, when we have a negative self-perception of ourselves, we're actually going to notice the things that confirm that. That's kind of the confirmation bias playing into effect there. So we might think, I'm no good at maths, I can't do any mental arithmetic at all, and we are going to notice the time that we accidentally added up incorrectly when we were buying our shopping and the bill came out to something more than we expected to. And we're going to notice that, and that's going to be filed in our brain under not good at maths, and it confirms that negative self-perception. What we probably didn't notice is that time we needed to get to the airport for our flight at a certain time, so we knew we needed to be there 3 hours before, and we knew how long it was going to take us to get there, so we worked out what time we needed to leave to get to the airport, which is the exact same skill as mental maths. But we probably didn't notice that because it's not part of our pattern or our way of thinking about ourselves. That's a great example of us doing well at that, but it's not our self-perception, so it doesn't get noticed. On the flip side, if we have positive self-perceptions of ourselves, then we're going to notice things that fit that pattern. And more importantly, we're going to notice opportunities. We're going to notice opportunities for development, for business growth, for career moves that we wouldn't have noticed if we didn't have that positive self-perception of ourselves. And by the way, I actually totally understand why we're more likely to have these negative self-perceptions. In some ways, it's almost a self-preservation. If we have something we're really excited about and we want to believe that will happen, it's almost really painful if that doesn't happen. The disappointment of the thing we want not happening is, in a way, just too great for us to almost want to hope for it. And I really get why we do that. That is a self-preservation thing, but in reality it hurts us because it doesn't allow us to believe, it doesn't allow us to have that self-image, it doesn't allow our brains to search for the things that confirm the pattern. So how do we turn a negative self-perception into a positive self-perception? Well, the reason we want this positive self-perception is, one, because it makes us feel good about ourselves, but two, it's going to open up ways of behaving and acting that get us to where we need to be. And in Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks about building new behaviours. And one of the ways that he suggests we do that is we start by identifying at that thing. So you might go into a new project where you are the leader, and this is your first time leading this project, and you might go into this with thoughts like, why have I been chosen for the leader? I don't know the first thing about leading. I'm not good enough to do this, all these kind of self-doubt thoughts. Whereas if instead you internalize, no, I am a leader, then you start to behave in ways that reflect that you're a leader. I actually remember the first time I employed this technique. I'm not sure I was completely conscious of the fact that I was doing it at the time, but it was actually with my coaching. And at the time I'd been coach training for maybe about 6 months, but I was still very new to it and very not confident enough about it at that point. I remember having a really good training session one day, and at the end actually texting my aunt saying, you know, I am a coach now, I believe in myself, I identify as a coach. And this actually had the effect that I was just describing, because shortly after having that light bulb moment, that moment where I changed my identity, I actually started booking coaching clients in the real world. Only friends and family at first, I needed to practice. And while I identified as a coach, I realised that I still had a journey to travel on and a lot of improvement to go. But it was that identifying as a coach that allowed me to go forward and say to my friends, hey, I'm a coach now, and while I'm still in training, I'd like to get my hours up, so I'd like to do some coaching. And from there, the skills grew, the opportunities grew, and I got to the point where I'm this really confident coach that I am today. And I can trace that back to that day when I first said the words, I am a coach. I'm using the same approach with YouTube. As I'm sat here filming this, this is my second YouTube video, so we're very early stages here, but I'm taking on the label of YouTuber. And you might think, that's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? That you're calling yourself a YouTuber when you've only just started. Yeah, I do feel that. But I also feel that if I identify as YouTuber, what is it that YouTubers do? Well, they consistently make videos on a regular schedule. They record stuff, they edit stuff, they keep going, they work at their craft. And so by interpreting that and internalizing that's what YouTubers do, and giving myself the label, I am a YouTuber, then now I'm behaving in that way. I'm in front of the camera for a second time today, filming a video for you on this topic. Now I'm conscious at this point you might be thinking, yeah, Lee, that's all well and good, let me just identify as the thing. But you might not believe it. And that's totally fair enough. Because if you don't believe it, and you go around saying you're this thing and you don't believe it, then you're just undermining yourself every time you say it. So, fair. It's not that simple. I accept that. I do want to give this topic the full attention it deserves, so I've decided not to rush through it at the end of this video. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to follow up with a second video all about this topic, which will come out next week. Today, I'm going to leave it here, but with a quick recap of what we've spoken about today. The first thing is that our self-perceptions are important because they affect the way that we behave and the way we see ourselves. The way we think about ourselves is often established from a young age, maybe when we're feeling vulnerable about ourselves to other people's perceptions, or it's something that grows over time as we build these skills. The self-perception is important because it affects our behaviour. Our brains are almost like a homing missile that adjusts towards our self-image and the person that we believe we are to become. Now, one thing on the process of building that self-image is that we can start to identify as that person. And by identifying as that person, we take steps to move in that direction. I understand it's not always that easy, so we are going to do a follow-up video on this topic. But this is all we have time for today. If you're watching this after the next videos come out, hopefully you'll see it linked here. Otherwise, hit subscribe so you'll be able to see it. Leave me a comment on your thoughts on self-perceptions and the way we think about ourselves. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much.